Welcome into the Yachts and Audibles podcast. I'm Matt Preem, Eric Scopel on the show as always. And today we are bringing on BJ Rains of Bronco Nation News, publisher for the site, to come on and give us some perspective on the Boise State Broncos, Oregon's opponent, 7 p.m. kick, Peacock. BJ, how's it going, man? Football's here. Has it hit like the grind? Are you in your routine yet?
Oh, it hit me somewhere over Dallas, Texas, when I realized I had two more flights after we landed on the three-legged trip back from Savannah, Georgia on Sunday. Yeah, that was fun. So, it's here. I'm excited for it. You wait all off season 8 months to be complaining about being in your fourth airport of the day. So, there's worse things you can. Then I always tell people there's better paying jobs out there, but there's certainly worse jobs than say you're going to work to go watch a football game. So super pumped for football season. And obviously Boise State got a nice win, which has added to the excitement, I guess, for the fan base here in town going into this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting back and forth game down there at Georgia State, or Georgia Southern, I should say. Boise State, always every year, one of the top group of 5 teams in college football. This year's no different. We've seen predictions for them making the college football playoff, and that probably shouldn't be a surprise, at least from us, our vantage point. Locally, you're in Boise. How would you say the expectations are for this season? And I guess what's made them as high as they are going into this type of season for you guys?
Oh, I think they're at a point now where a large majority of the fan base would call it a disappointing season if they don't make the playoff. Like for eight months, it's just been building and building and building. And whether it was starting with keeping Ashton Jenty and retaining him, which was one of the, I think a huge surprise. I think a lot of fans just assumed, okay, it is what it is. Boise State can't afford him. He's going to go get $1 million somewhere. When he announced he was coming back, that just started a number of big things. They got Malachi Nelson to come in January, and it's just been building. And Spencer Danielson has continued to say the right things, do the right things, and a lot of returning talent coming back. So I think it's just kind of been this snowball effect ever since he was named the head coach in early December of last year. And so, yeah, I think the expectations are super high this year, and this fan base is frustrated. They're not happy, not used to the last couple of years of what has happened. I mean, you go back 2021, they lose 3 games in a row at home. That's never happened in a long time. 2022, they lose at UTEP, as a double-digit favorite, and one of the most embarrassing, losses in the history of the program. Last year, they start 4-5. I mean, it's crazy. I think it was 4 times in the last 22 years. From 99 to 20, they lost more than 3 games in a season. I mean, 4 times out of 20-plus seasons, they had more than 3 losses. They've lost at least 4 games in each of the last 3 seasons alone. And so it's just been a weird, couple of years here where fans are not used to it. And we're looking in the record books for I've looked at the 1997 season on the record book more than I ever have in the, thought I ever would, because it was the last season they were really bad. And the last couple of years I've had to go back and look at a lot of stuff up from that season to compare. So, they're super excited with Jenty, with a lot, Danielson, just a lot of reasons to be excited. And, that's partially because, like I said, they just haven't had a couple Boise State type years the last couple of years, and they feel this is the team and this is the year and this is the schedule to kind of get them back to that level. So, yeah, a lot of excitement, a lot of people hoping and expecting the playoff this year.
I hope this isn't redundant, but the coach who was leading your program when things weren't going great is a coach Oregon fans are very familiar with. Sure. That's Andy Avalos, who I think when Oregon fans bid him farewell and he headed off to Boise, people thought this is going to work great. He was a fantastic coordinator at Oregon. Can you just get into maybe what went wrong? I think it was surprising for people out West, just as you said, expecting Boise to always be a 10-plus win team, to send a coach out there that people had a lot of high opinions of, and then to see it not work out.
Yeah, I mean, those 3 years I just mentioned were the 3 years he was the head coach. And I remember, I broke the story that he was being hired at Boise State as the head coach. And I remember when that kind of happened and came out and it was official, I can't remember a more universally liked hire in a long time. I mean, everybody just thought it was the perfect fit. The players as a defensive coach loved him. He fit. He was a former, star player here. He just fit all the molds, and he got his experience at Oregon. Now he's going to come back and just kind of kill it as head coach. And everybody just thought it was going to be perfect. And the approval rating was probably 99.9% at the time, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason. Some just once they started losing, it just got tough, and there was just some players that were a little unhappy, some coaches that ended up leaving that maybe weren't happy, and it just kind of it was a a lot of turmoil, I guess you could say. He ends up firing his offensive coordinator pretty early on into his second year. There was some, talk that he was kind of a little overbearing, I guess, in terms of what the offense needed to do in some of the games. And so it was just, it was just a weird, like I said, they lost 3 home games in a row, which you lose 1 home game on the Blue, it's not good. You lose 3 in a row, and you had fans already right away in year 1 saying, what happened here? Did they make a mistake? And so I think last year you could write a book about what happened in the season last year. I mean, it was just a crazy season where their star, receiver leaves the team. Andy Avalos basically calls out, without naming TCU, calls out TCU for illegally getting him to leave. And then, they end up together at TCU now, by the way, that Andy Avalos is the defensive coordinator there. Again, everyone thought it was going to work out. I'm not in that locker room. I don't know all the ins and outs of why it didn't. You just hear from some coaches that said maybe that he was a little overbearing in terms of the offense in particular and not letting Tim Plow run his offense. You had some great longtime coaches, Kent Riddle, some diehard guys, Winston Venable that left the coaching staff. There was a lot of change. I think 4 coaches left after his first year. Not really sure why or what happened there. I just know it didn't work out, and they actually won a game against New Mexico. The craziest part, they won a game by like 30 points, and then the next morning he got canned, and their season was going nowhere. Spencer Danielson takes over. They win the last 2 games of the regular season, thanks to like Fresno losing to somebody terrible, New Mexico or something. Boise State backdoors into the championship game, then ends up winning the championship game in Vegas. And so here's Spencer Danielson, holding the trophy and the confetti falling and everything, which was just a scene that nobody ever would have saw coming. I think he's the first interim coach in the history of college football to win a conference championship. And then, they had no choice. The next day they announced him as the permanent coach. And like I said, it was another, maybe we should caution ourselves. It was another very highly well-received move to name him the coach. But to this point, he's won the offseason. He's done everything he's needed to do. And they get a win in game 1. And so everyone's, feeling great. But yeah, I think the Andy Avalos, and it's unfortunate. I know I'm rambling here, but I'll just say quickly, like, he was one of the greatest Bronco players ever. He was one of the favorite Broncos ever. And unfortunately, like, for the alumni functions and all that kind of stuff, like, I don't know how welcome he is back now. It just kind of stinks. Yeah. Like, I'm sure that, that time will pass and it'll happen. But I just it's a shame that his tenure as a coach is going to overshadow, I don't want to say ruin, but overshadow some of the great things he did as a player here and as a coordinator here, because I think the way it happened, the way there was some bad blood, I guess, kind of on the way out, and some things that had happened, and just the way that it happened. You hope he's welcome back at some point, but I just don't see right now if he would feel comfortable coming back and if people would want him back. So that is a sad side story to all this, is that his one of the greatest Broncos in Boise State history, probably at least for a while, won't be coming back anytime soon.
BJ, you kind of touched on Spencer Danielson's craziness of being the interim head coach and winning a conference championship. But I was going to ask, just kind of like, he's assumed the job, 35-year-old guy. He's one of the younger coaches in college football. And basically outside of a couple years at Azusa Pacific, his entire arch of a coaching career has been at Boise. What's his background? What made him the fit to be named the interim? And obviously when you win a conference championship in the way you did, you're right. You kind of have to just name him the head coach. But what makes him head coach quality? What makes him such a good guy?
Well, I've been waiting for. I mean, I've known him for 8 years, but particularly since he took over as head coach, I kept waiting for him to change and assume that guarded head coach, kind of just a lot of, as we all know, these coaches. But he has been the exact same guy that I've known for 8 years up until, yesterday's press conference and beyond. And he is just a people person. You won't find a player to say a bad thing about him. Everybody just loves him. He knows how to connect with them. The parents all love him. I've heard he's done way more things in terms of giving more, I think Andy Avalos would give 1 hour on the night before the game for the parents, to come hang out at the hotel with the kids. And, Spencer gives them 2 hours. And there's just smaller things like that have really endeared himself to the parents and to the players. And you've just never heard anyone say a bad thing about him. And, he started literally at the bottom. He came in as a, GA. 8 years ago, actually, he met Andy Avalos on the recruiting trail. He helped, it was his connection, came in as a, low paid, unpaid GA, Did a really good job when they added that 10th assistant in terms of college football. He was able to take on a role as the edge coach and just kind of worked his way up to, D-line coach and then defensive coordinator, and then has just continued to keep elevating his game and has passed every test. He's just a super high energy guy. You'll never see him without a smile on his face. And, he's very open about his faith. Which I think, is something that can go one of two ways, I guess, in nowadays. But, he'll get, a lot, over half the team probably out there in a pregame prayer circle. And he says a prayer before the game. And he's actually been baptizing some of the players, like in the river near campus here recently, and goes to church with a lot of them. And he changed the schedule this year. That's one of the things he did is Sundays is now their day off. It used to be Mondays. They switch it to Sundays in large part so that the players and the coaches can go to church. And, he's just come in and done a lot of things. And he was at every single possible, school function, Rotary Club, breakfast, every, Kiwanis Club, like you name it. He was giving speeches at every possible thing all off season. And you just kept waiting for him to slow down. Or as I said, you're waiting for it to be fake, and it's not. It's real. And as I said, I would say the approval rating when he was hired was probably like 80-20. There was probably 20% that wanted Jeff Choate, who got the Nevada job, and just thought finally with all these struggles they needed to go outside the Boise State family to find a coach. But I would say of the 20% that maybe were not on board when he got hired, almost all of those have had to be convinced since then with the offseason that he had and what he's done. And you won't find, literally you won't find a single person to say something bad about Spencer Danielson. Like I said, it almost seems too good to be true. And maybe at some point it'll prove to be, but to this point he's as advertised. And I'll tell you what, from a media perspective, we're getting way more access to practice. 2 practices, Tuesdays and Wednesdays during the season, are open in their entirety to the media. Like that's unheard of. There's a lot of things we can't report on and say. Any of the team drills, periods and stuff, and depth chart type stuff are kind of embargoed. But we were asking for 20 minutes a couple days a week, and they're like, "How about Tuesdays and Wednesdays? We're getting the full practice, so we can stay." It's crazy. All of fall camp was open, the entire fall camp in August. It's been we met with him in July or June, I guess, and it was probably maybe May. But he met with a small group of 3 or 4 guys that had been here the longest and basically said, what can I help to do your job better? And what do you guys want? And then we'd say some stuff. And some of it he said, no, can't do that. And here's why. And we understood it. But some of the stuff, he took our stuff, within days, there's some of the stuff we'd requested had changed. And then, like I said, we got much more practice access. And so he's doing all the right things. Everybody loves him right now. We'll see about 10:30 on Sunday if the feeling is the same. But so far, he could run for, mayor of Boise right now, and he'd win in a landslide.
What did the opener tell you about this Bronco team? Because I think you're probably like us, where you wait this whole offseason and you just want to see football. And then when you see it, you learn a lot of things and you have a lot of questions coming in. You get some answers. What were some of the things that you maybe take away from the way the team performed in the opener?
The defense was supposed to make a ton of improvements in the offseason and didn't look like they did. They were terrible against the pass last year. They had some really bad issues giving up 3rd and longs last year, and they gave up over 300 passing yards, and they gave up 6 third downs of at least 7 yards against Georgia Southern. So they were not good on 3rd down. They were not good in the red zone. I think 7 for 7 in the red zone was Georgia Southern. And so, I think that some of the problems defensively that, Eric Chenander taking over as defensive coordinator, they brought in a new safeties coach. And so, they felt like the pass defense was going to be better. They talked it up all off season. They brought in 2 Pac-12 transfers, Jeremiah Irby from Cal as one of the starting corners. They brought in, Davion Banks from Washington, as well, 2 experienced corners that have, starting experience in the Pac-12. And to this point, the pass defense really wasn't improved. So they claim a lot of it was rotational type stuff, easy stuff they can fix because of just playing in the heat and just some coaching errors, they said, in terms of subbing and game plan and some other stuff. But they, the defense, we all thought with a lot of returning key players was going to be more dominant than it was. That was my main takeaway. And then obviously Ashton Jenty is, as good as advertised, if not better. And it's funny because when you're in Boise and you watch, you guys probably deal with it too. Everybody does it. When you're covering your team or you're watching your team and you're kind of zeroed in for 8 months on your team, yeah, you think a guy's good, but it's like, okay, are we hyping this guy up because we watch him every day, or is he actually that good? And then you go watch him do what he did in a game, and then see all the national people talk about him like they are, and you're like, yeah, what I saw in practice was real. He gets 20 yards downfield before he gets touched. I mean, that's the way that's true. So Ashton Jenty's as good as advertised, and I think we thought this offense was going to be good, and the O-line played really well. And when you've got Jenty and the running backs they have behind him, and a solid quarterback and a good receiving core, like, this offense should put up a lot of points and be one of the better offenses in the country, which we thought was going to be the case. And they did nothing to probably change our mind on that there in the first game on Saturday.
I had kind of like a two-parter. One, why did Jenty return? You mentioned it was kind of a surprise. Everyone kind of assumed it was going to be. And then I guess the second part of it is Maddox beating out Malachi Nelson. That was another one where maybe those from outside were a little surprised that happened. What were those two happenings there?
Well, I mean, again, any school in the country would have gladly taken Ashton Jenty, and the one that he's playing on Saturday, I know definitely would have taken him. Maybe even tried to take him. So, he could have been. I think he could have been playing in this stadium one way or the other in this game if he really wanted to, and if there was other things that were more important to him than some of the things that were big for him. And I would say there's a lot of things. I do think Spencer Danielson is a huge part of it. I think that there's just the city of Boise State. I mean, Taylon Green left for Arkansas and transferred after the season. And that was mostly because of like mismanagement of the QB position and stuff, not because Arkansas went in the portal and like stole him away. He was just unhappy with how much he was playing and losing his job. But Boise State really has not lost other than him. And again, that was on him wanting to leave on his own. Boise State has not lost really anybody for NIL reasons, where other schools are coming in and swooping them away. Like Boise State is, and they don't have the same NIL money. They just have a culture. They just have a culture at Boise State where they get guys that have chips on their shoulder and guys that come where money's not the most important thing. And you got to come in and earn your money at Boise State. They don't, promise any kind of guaranteed money to freshmen. You can earn it and get it when you get there as a freshman. They just don't tell you ahead of time, come sign here and we'll give you $100,000. And so they get kids that are hungry and eager to play. And I think for Ashton, part of it was like wanting to leave a legacy at Boise State and wanting to have be a guy that maybe someday has a statue outside the stadium, or a guy that, when I'm talking about Andy Avalos not being welcomed back maybe for a while, like if Ashton Jenty were to go to play 1 year at Oregon or 1 year at Georgia, I don't know if it's the same feeling for him trying to come back and watch the spring game in a couple of years. And I think that legacy of being one of the all-time greats at Boise State, and I think that was a big part. And Boise State put, I believe it was around $300,000 in terms of NIL money together, which was a huge increase from where he was getting. And it was by far at the time the biggest NIL package for a Boise State student athlete. I think that was for 1 year, that was enough for him. And it wasn't all about the money, but he knew they took care of him the best they could, and his money was going to come. And so I think he's, the slogan at Boise State this year is built different. And I think that, a lot of these guys really are built different. I think Ashton Jenty is certainly a guy on the field and off the field. You talk to Spencer Danielson, every time you ask about Ashton Jenty, in terms of his skills on the field, even like in the post-game press conference, he goes out of his way to talk about how good of a person he is. And he's like, I'm going to keep saying this because nobody talks about it enough. Like, he's an even better person than he is player. And I think his character and whatever it was, he just didn't want to take the cash grab for 1 year. He got enough to be happy here, and he wanted to leave a legacy here and be an all-time great. And he's certainly now going to have a chance to do that. And with Madsen, a lot of people just assumed, Malachi Nelson, 5-star transfer, is going to come in and win the job, but he just wasn't ready. This is now 2 years in a row where, again, Maddox Madsen's kind of this forgotten guy that nobody gives him a chance. He's a 5'11", 200-pound white kid, was a 3-star recruit out of Utah. Like, you look at him and he doesn't necessarily look like the starting quarterback, but he continues to get the job done. And like I said, last season, going up against a guy who is now the starting quarterback at Arkansas, Taylon Green, like, he, by the middle of the season, had overtaken him as the starting quarterback. Like, this is now two different coaching staffs and 2 different years where he has proven to win a job against the starter at Arkansas and a 5-star freshman from USC. He at some point, this guy deserves some credit. He's a solid quarterback, and it was a big story here. A lot of fans expected it to be Malachi. A lot of fans wanted it to be Malachi. Madsen at times last year, had some balls that could have been intercepted and weren't, and maybe didn't have the greatest year last year overall. And so some fans are kind of remembering that. And, Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator, kind of scoffed me when I said this. But I mean, you look at terms of who has a higher ceiling, so to speak. I would think Malachi Nelson probably long-term in terms of his pro future and all that stuff has a higher ceiling, but they don't care about that. They want to know who gives them the best chance right now to win games. And the switch to a pro style offense and some of the terminology and things. Malachi Nelson did some really nice things in camp, but I just think they thought with back-to-back road games to start it off and just needing, again, when you have Ashton Jenty and you have these running backs and you have this offensive line, like they don't need some guy to come in and be a Heisman candidate at quarterback. They just need you to, it's disrespectful to say game manager, because that's not what he is, but you just need a guy to not screw it up, not throw too many picks, keep the ball moving, make some good throws when you need to extend the chains on third down. And they just felt like right now he was the safer pick to start the season. And he certainly did nothing in week one, passing for 280 yards and 71% completion to prove that he wasn't the right guy.
You mentioned kind of the possibility of going to Nelson and that addition. I'm curious on Chris Marshall and Cam Camper, a couple of receivers that the Broncos added, and Marshall's in particular, a very strange and not a very direct route to Boise, we'll put it that way. And if you can get into that if you'd like, but these are two big body athletic guys on the outside. And I know Camper was pretty impressive in his opener. What can you tell me about those two and maybe just the receiving room in general that Oregon is going against?
Well, I mean, the two leading of the three projected starters for Boise State, two of them didn't even have a catch in the first game. And that wasn't necessarily a bad thing because you just saw some of these other guys step up. I mean, Prince Strawn is a 6'5" receiver who's supposed to be an NFL guy. He didn't even have a target in the first game. And he's a returning player. But, so part of that is because some other guys stepped up. You mentioned Cam Camper, I think 4 catches for 99 yards. Indiana transfer. He only had 1 year of eligibility left. But I mean, this is a guy that I think 1 year in like 8 games had like 50 catches at Indiana before he got hurt. I mean, he was a big time Big Ten receiver and got hurt, didn't get a chance to play 2 years in a row, had his seasons cut short due to injury, only had 1 year of eligibility left. Saw an opportunity at Boise State, had another starting receiver, Latrell Caples, and him went to the same high school or were best friends growing up, and it just thought for his last year it made sense to come out here. And yeah, he certainly looks like he's looking ready to take advantage of it. He had a couple really nice catches. He had a 53-yard catch from Madsen after they were backed up due to a penalty, deep in their own red zone or end zone. So Cam Camper's going to be, I think, a star receiver, and Chris Marshall maybe makes the best individual highlight catches you'll see in practice every day. I mean, you throw a ball up and he's going to find a way to catch it. And yeah, it was kicked off 2 SEC teams for various reasons, marijuana involved, and went to a JUCO for a year. And he has kind of realized that this is his last chance. And he's, I think, had the angle of, Spencer Danielson and faith. And, that's something that's big in Chris Marshall's family. And so Boise State gave him a chance, but said, you're going to have to do this, and this before we put you on the team. And he came in spring ball and did everything right and checked all the boxes, and they let him stick around for the season. And he had 2 catches in that opener as well, and I think is going to be another key guy. So, yeah, you're talking about a former 5-star receiver that was at Ole Miss and Texas A&M, and then Cam Camper, an established wide receiver in the Big Ten. And neither one of those guys started the game, on Saturday. So they have a really strong wide receiver group. As I said, 5-6 guys they feel pretty good about. And then, 3 to 4 running backs they feel pretty good about as well. So they feel like the offense is going to have a chance to put up a lot of points. It's just going to be whether or not the defense can hold teams enough for them to, win enough games.
BJ, my last question for you is just kind of where's the strength going to be for Boise going into Saturday, and where's kind of the area like, oh boy, we don't know how this one's going to play out for you.
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be the running game. I mean, Ashton Jenty, 267 yards, a school record, 6 touchdowns, as I'm sure everybody listening to this, already knows. Yeah. But they had, a true freshman behind him, Sire Gaines, that is 17 years old, and he rushed for 110 yards and had a really impressive game. He was over 150 yards from scrimmage. He also had 3 catches for 44 yards. Boise State's the only team in the country last weekend that had 2 players with 150 yards from scrimmage, and they were both running backs. And Sire Gaines is actually their number 3 running back. Their number 2 running back, Breezy Dubar, didn't play because he was banged up during fall camp. And so, if Dubar can come back on Saturday, they legitimately have a 3-headed monster at running back, 3 guys they feel super good about. I'm sure they're going to have some plays and things to get multiple guys out there at the same time and try to really lean on that. And in a game like this, I think they're going to rely on the running game and try to use a little clock and just try to, do what they can, because certainly, they feel like they have, one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the country. When you add the 2 behind them, I think there's a strong case to be made. They have the best running back room in the country with the 3 of them. And so they're going to really rely on that. And I think they feel really good about the offensive line. I don't know if you guys saw the game against Georgia Southern, but some of these, Ashton Jenty's good, but you or I could have run through some of these holes. And that was a Georgia Southern team that had 2 first-team all defensive linemen from the Sun Belt, coming back. So it wasn't like you're just playing some, Rudy Poo D line. They had 2 all-league guys playing, and they had holes where he went 15 yards before they got touched. It was literally 20 feet wide. So the offensive line and the running game, I think, are going to be a huge strength for this team. On the other side of it, the concern is certainly the defense, and in particular, just the passing defense going up against Gabriel, who side note, I'm sure, again, everybody knows this, but Spencer Danielson was the D coordinator, went up again, and Boise State went up against Gabriel at UCF a couple years ago. And they actually did a really good job on him for 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, he finally got going a little bit, and UCF came back from actually like 20 down or 17 down to win the game. And it was a game that Boise State should have won, but they actually, for the stats don't say it, but for a good portion of that game, they held UCF's offense and Gabriel really well for at least half that game. And so that Spencer Danielson, who's now the head coach, was the D coordinator on that team. And so he obviously has coached against them at least once, and who knows if that'll help or not. But that's going to be the concern if you're a Boise State fan. You just gave up 322 passing yards and gave up 12 of 19 on 3rd down to a Sun Belt team in Georgia Southern, who they have a pretty good offense. They were top 15 in the country in passing the last 2 years under Clay Helton, but it's obviously just a little tiny bit of an upgrade going up to Austin Stadium against Oregon and Gabriel and that offense. So I think that's where your concern is if you're Boise State. Can they get enough stops? Can they get off the field enough on 3rd down to give the offense a chance to score enough points to win this game?
I wonder, BJ, looking at what you've seen from Boise State fans the last couple of days, they get the win, but I think almost maybe more notably is how poorly Oregon played against Idaho. And I'm sure fans in your neck of the woods are pretty familiar with the Vandals. That's an in-state program that I know you guys don't play every year.
They were very unhappy with the coaches, the Boise State coaches, giving so much praise to Idaho during the press conference on Monday. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all. But I'm curious, how has that game and the way it played out maybe impacted some of the external expectations in Boise going into this one?
I do think what Ashton Jenty did, combined with the score of the Oregon game, I think a small percentage of fans do now all of a sudden give them a little better chance of hanging and maybe winning this game. I don't think the reason the most rational fans, I think, still realize, hey, look at the stats. Oregon should have had way more points in 24. It was just kind of a fluky game. Give Idaho credit. They played hard. That ain't happening for Oregon 2 weeks in a row. There's the sense maybe you're, not catching Oregon at a good time because they're going to be focused and locked in now after what happened last week. But I do think winning that game, seeing what Jenty can do, seeing what the offense did, 600 plus yards of offense was the most Boise State had in 6 years, 56 points, the most they've had in 5 or 6 years. I think certainly some fans, all of a sudden, most of them probably had a couple of Mick Ultras in them after the game and they're celebrating, but they were like, all right, bring on Oregon. Now, we got them where we want them. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I do think, yes, that score of that game surprises some people saying, oh, maybe Oregon's not as good or whatever. And combined with what Boise State did offensively, I think they feel there's a shot. And don't forget, Boise State fans also love to point out that they're 3-0 against Oregon all time. And so they went there and won the game, in Kellen Moore's first, road start, and then obviously won the game in Boise, and then, beat Justin Herbert in the bowl game, as everybody knows, went back in 2017. So that's a big deal for Boise State fans. There's no denying, over the last 10 years, which program has obviously been ranked higher and done bigger things, and no one would deny that. But Boise State fans just point to hey, doesn't matter, we're 3-0 against you. Anytime an Oregon fan tries to talk trash. So I think that's a big deal for them. I do think some are a little more encouraged they can hang with this, but I still think most rational fans know this is going to be a really, really tough game. And honestly, guys, like Boise State fans, I think they just want to kind of keep it close. Like this is, there's no such thing as a moral victory. I get it, but when they're fighting for the playoff, like they're going to be favorites to heavy favorites in like almost every game they play the rest of the season. So if they can just not get embarrassed in this game, like 60-7 or whatever, and keep it somewhat competitive. They feel like if they can, finish 11-1 or whatever, or 12-1 and win the conference, that they still would have a really, really good chance to get in the playoffs. So this, I don't think, is a make or break type playoff game for Boise State. I still think, maybe if Liberty's undefeated, I just don't know if they would take an undefeated Liberty again based on how poorly they played last year, as Oregon fans know, and then just with the schedule they have this year. I think a lot of fans think 12-1 with a competitive game against Oregon would get it done. So I think from that standpoint, they just want to see where they stand. They want to try to be competitive, not get embarrassed, on national TV, national streaming, I guess, and just try to. That's got people riled up here too. A lot of the older folks here wondering what the heck Peacock is. No, I think that's the big one. Just keep it close, keep it competitive. Don't get anybody hurt, and then they've got a bye, and then their schedule lightens up with 3 home games after that. And so I think that they feel like they'd be in a pretty good spot to still do what they want to do this year.
Here's BJ Rains, who covers the Boise State Broncos for Bronco Nation News. Thanks for coming on the show, BJ. And hey, hopefully we catch you in the press box here in Autzen, and safe travels over here.
Looking forward to it. Going to do our pregame show live from the field before the game, and then looking forward to being up in the box. And heard great things, but never been to Oregon State twice, but never been to Oregon. So looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm just thankful it's much shorter, easier trip than going to Georgia Southern last week. So looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, definitely hope to see you guys there.
Appreciate you, BJ. Thank you.